And he was saying, Nick, we're not giving up on you. We're going to find out what's wrong with you. And I just said, Daddy, I just want a hug. Daddy, please let me out of here.
I'm Nikki Owen, and in 1978, my case made legal history at the Old Bailey. Growing up, I had a really normal, happy childhood. We were a really close family, so everything looked like I had a very, very good future, very happy, exciting future ahead of me. I remember it was one evening, my parents had gone out and I was watching TV, my sister and brother were in bed, and I suddenly felt this overwhelming depression for no reason. I felt very empty. I was shocked by the intensity of what I was feeling. And I just ended up taking a load of tablets. I don't even know what really motivated me to take the tablets. I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and walked 5 miles to the local police station to tell them what I'd done. I began putting on a lot of weight. I actually put on about 5 stone in weight over a period of 3 years. I was drinking heavily. When I was about 15 or 16, I used to have waist-length, long, brown, reddy hair. And one evening, I cut off all my hair. I just felt I'd been taken over, that I had no control, and my life was slipping away. I remember this very cold, bleak day. It was February, and it was a really depressing day. My parents were taking my sister up to the Royal Academy for a music lesson, and they didn't want me at home on my own because they said, you're going to eat all the food and you're going to drink all the alcohol, and we're going to take your key away from you. And my sister felt really sorry for me, so she gave me her front door key. I crept back home and I immediately started eating all of the food and drinking all of the alcohol I could find. And I felt this overwhelming blackness coming over me. I hunted around the house and I found this box of matches, and I went up to my bedroom and I set fire to the curtains in my bedroom, and I laid down on my bed and I just waited, and I couldn't believe how quickly the fire took hold. It was just, the curtains went up really quickly. The window, the glass of the window pane just smashed all over the bedroom, some of it onto me. And then there was a whimpering at the door, at my bedroom door, and it was Emma, a little border collie puppy. It was like that thought that Emma would die. I realised I needed to get out. And so I rushed out of my bedroom, and the floor of my bedroom then collapsed down into the kitchen below. But I had Emma, and I was able to run down the stairs. It was at that point that I heard police sirens and fire engines, and I was arrested and I was taken to the local police station, and I was interviewed for hours, and they kept asking me, why did you do this? Why did you do this? I was told that I would have to go to court on the Monday and face a charge of arson. I was then remanded in Holloway prison for 2 weeks. My parents just wanted to understand what had caused my need to burn the house down, and they worked closely with a psychiatrist that said that I needed to be admitted into a mental home They prescribed this very heavy sedative that I just felt like I was a zombie. The judge gave me a 2-year suspended sentence on the grounds that I continue with psychiatric treatment. I went back home, and at this time the house had been rebuilt. I stayed in my room a lot. I didn't want to engage with any conversation, and deep down I knew that I was still experiencing all of these rages, these deep depressions, and this confusion as to why I'd just become this evil, evil girl. When I was in the spare room at home, my mum was in the kitchen, and I set fire to the house again. And I just ran out the house without telling my mum and ran into the local wood. And luckily, my mum smelt the burning and immediately called the fire brigade, the police. I was rearrested, and this time there was no bail. There was no nice approach anymore. I was sent back to Holloway, and I became very violent in Holloway prison. That they kept me in solitary confinement because I was so violent. I was given a mattress. I was dressed in a dress that was made out of indestructible material so that I couldn't hang myself. My cell was kept in darkness, and I was fed twice a day through a hatch in the door. I was examined by 8 different psychiatrists at the time in prison, and their reports came back, and just to paraphrase some of the themes of the report, I was described as a maniacal psychopath, incurably insane, and a danger to society. The worst moment of my entire life. And it's so vivid, I remember it over 40 years later, was when I was in solitary confinement. My mum and dad begged the prison warden that they just needed to see me, and they just needed to talk to me. And she agreed that they could look through the little slit in the cell, and my dad could talk to me through that slit. I remember my dad's eyes, but he was trying so hard to be really calm and really brave. And he was saying, "Nick, we're not giving up on you. We're going to find out what's wrong with you." And I just said, "Daddy, I just want a hug. Daddy, please let me out of here." And even now, I remember that absolute, I really, really, really just want Dad to put his arms around me and tell me it's going to be all right. And that's what he wanted, but he was trying so hard to be calm. It was the worst moment of my entire life. I think most parents might have given up, but they refused to give up. My dad went to the library the very next day, and he was researching pituitary gland, endocrine system, and he was taking all these notes, and he was doing this all day, and then his head was full with all these facts. And he was walking our dog and in the local woods when he bumped into an old colleague, and she asked him, "How's that lovely daughter of yours, Nicola?" And he said, "Haven't you heard?" And he told her the story. And she said, "That's really interesting." She said, "I've just read an article in a woman's magazine, and it's called, 'Are Your Periods Driving You Mad?' I'll put it through your letterbox, Mr. Owen, and you can see if it helps." And I remember Dad telling me that night he got this article, and as he and Mum read it, he just went cold. In the article, there was a doctor called Dr. Katrina Dalton, who was an expert in premenstrual syndrome. And so the very next day, my mum and dad, bless them, they just jumped in the car, they drove up to Harley Street, and they gate crashed her surgery, begging to be allowed to speak to Dr. Dalton. And she agreed to come and see me in Holloway Prison. She took blood tests. She asked me lots and lots of questions. She then cross-referenced all the dates that my mum had supplied from her diary. And after about 2 weeks, her report came in that said that in her expert opinion, I was suffering from a severe lack of progesterone, and the result was severe premenstrual syndrome, or as people spoke about it at the time, premenstrual tension. And in 1978, this was just not even discussed or talked about or considered. So when my parents had the report, they then realised that their next job was to convince my barrister to convince the courts to give me a second chance. Within about 2 to 3 weeks of those two things happening, I was allowed out of solitary confinement. I was given the chance to be in a cell with other prisoners, and I was given a job in the kitchen because the change was just so astonishing. And actually it was my dad that after about 6 to 8 weeks, he said, we need to get back those same psychiatrists that had written Nicola off. We need to get them back to re-examine her and see what they think. And so every one of those psychiatrists came back very skeptical, and they were all really shocked by the change in my physical appearance, my emotional mood, in how different I sounded. And in fact, one psychiatrist described my change as a miracle. I think he used the words like, I'm too long in the tooth to believe in miracles. This transformation is the closest I've ever seen to a miracle. It was on the 20th of December, 1978, that my case was heard. When I stood in the dock, the judge was notified that the prosecution had been delayed in traffic. The Blackwall Tunnel is really notorious in the south of the UK for getting really congested. And this was fantastic news for me because it gave the judge the opportunity to read through all of the reports. When the prosecution finally arrived, the judge said, it's okay, the defendant doesn't need to sit in the dock. And he said, I am completely satisfied that this defendant is suffering from severe premenstrual tension, a hormone imbalance, and as long as she continues her treatment for the hormones, she is free to go. It was such a historic landmark case. So I was given a 2-year suspended sentence on the grounds that I would continue to seek help from Dr. Dalton to check that my hormones were balanced. The case had just made legal history, which was unbelievable. And I was back home for Christmas with Mum, Dad, and my sister and brother. This is a family love story. It's a story of a parent's refusal to give in and forget about their daughter. It's a story of unconditional love, absolute unconditional love. And I owe my life, I owe my second chance to live to my mum and dad because they didn't ever give up on me.